Welcome, everybody. Good evening, Erev Tov. My name is Paul Resnick. I'm the new exec here at the Jewish Federation of Western Connecticut. We are holding this commemoration of October 7th today, along with 120 other federations across North America between today and tomorrow, and countless communities and synagogues and schools holding commemorations of a day, may I dare say, that will live on in infamy. A day, perhaps like September 11th, where we remember where we were on October 7th and 8th when we first heard the news of what was going on in Gaza, what was going on the kibbutzim, what was going on in Israel in general. That day will be part of our psyche, unfortunately, forever. It has certainly changed the way we live as Jews here in America, for the worse, I would say, and certainly has changed the course of history for the Jews and for the state of Israel. Today we are really blessed with a wonderful group of people. Look around you. This is your federation. Coming from diverse communities, different backgrounds, different levels of observance and knowledge, all coming together under the umbrella of the Jewish Federation of Western Connecticut. And many people who are joining us on Zoom as well. I dare say, and if somebody wants to correct me, they can. I think this is the largest gathering that Federation has done, at least in a number of years. I can say that much with some certainty. So today we begin our program with two members of our community, Barbara Phillips and Ruthie Holt, who will be presenting two tributes and a poem. We then turn to Rabbi Polikoff, who's the rabbi here in B'nai Israel in Southbury, and has been a wonderful partner in this building, and Rabbi Mark Cohen from New Milford. Rabbi Polikoff will present a tefillah, a prayer for the Israeli army, and Rabbi Cohen for the hostages. Please rise.
Thank you all for being here today. It warms my heart. Libby Cohn McGorry, a tribute. I speak today on behalf of myself, but also my late husband Arthur, who has 4 generations of family living in Israel. His uncle Libby survived the death march and immigrated to Israel after the war. This extended family of 35 plus has thrived there. Libby, our grandniece, was part of the younger generation of the family. She stood out because of her infectious laugh, her gorgeous smile, and her warmth, as you can see from these pictures. Everyone was drawn to Libby. Our bond there is a strong one, fostered by a number of trips to Israel, by phone calls, texts, Zooms. We shared the good times and the bad. In addition, many of the relatives have visited us here. These were joyous times. Then the phone call came. On October 7th, this beautiful soul, Libby, was shot in the stomach while at the Nova Music Festival. She called our cousin Yariv, a doctor, her father, as she tried to escape in a car full of wounded young people. "I'm dying," she said on the cell phone. "No, you are not," said her father. And over the course of 20 to 25 minutes, he gave her instructions on what to do with the wound and comfort her with words as best he could. Libby died. This brilliant, energetic 21-year-old who loved life, loved family, loved to cook, loved to bake challah, loved to sing and dance, served in the Southern Command Army, and love to help others, especially children with special needs, was forever gone. I can't even imagine the horror of parents losing a child, but losing a child in this horrific way is unimaginable. Our grief for Libby and the October 7th attacks doesn't diminish the horror I feel for the thousands of Gazans killed in the war. But my grief for Libby is a different grief, the grief of losing a member of my extended family. Jewish grief on October 7th, regardless of whether you are a victim or had family or friends in Israel, is a grief over Jewish life ended because it was a Jewish life. Libby, your memory remains in our hearts. To all those out there who have lost precious loved ones, may this horror end soon.
Thank you for being here. My poem was written on Tisha B'Av, echoing the generational Jewish narrative where loss and hope converge. When she wept, or when she wept alone in the exile of her wounded soul, she heard the agonizing whispers beneath the ruins and despair. A mother trembled in convulsive pain, or when she wept, bereft of her beloved children, the fallen and the wounded, exiled, broken to the core. Or when she wept alone, a widow left to mourn, blinded by her tears, so vastly streaming like a river cresting at the edge, and washing the millennia's fear. Or when she wept, bereft of her beloved children, the bleeding and the broken-hearted, she wraps them in her sackcloth, sheltering what's left, a many broken piece, now covered in her hands. Or when she wept alone, a widow left to mourn, she heard the agonizing cries. Their whispers are no more, now echoing in ruins, so vast, abandoned, and in blackened dust. Oh, how she wept, then begged for salve of the wounds, a hope in soothing touch, a healing of the desolate, a promise.
Mishaberach, Avotenu Avraham, Yitzhak v'Yaakov, v'Imotenu, Sarah Rivka Rachel v'Leah, Hu v'Reich et Chayalei Tzava ha'Haganah Yisrael, v'Anshe ha'Bitachon, Al Mishmar Artzenu, v'Yabasha ba'Avir u'v'Yam. May the one who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebekah, Rachel, and Leah, bless the soldiers of the armed forces and security forces of the army of Israel, who on the ground, in the air, and at sea, protect the land. May God grant that they defeat the enemies who rise up against us. May God protect our soldiers from all harm and danger, from all injury and illness. May God afford blessing and success to all their missions. Regarding them, may the words of the Torah prove true. For Adonai your God, who goes before you, shall join you to battle your foes and aid you to be victorious. But no more, and let us say, Amen.
A prayer for those who are missing or captive. Elohei Yisrael, Tzur Yisrael v'go'alo, El Rachum v'chanun. B'tfilah v'tachanunim, anu ponim elecha, lachazir b'shalom levateihem et yakirei amacha, hashvuyim v'nedarot, shene'akru b'yad zdonit mibateihem, v'shenechtafu el eretz oyev. God of Israel, our rock and our redeemer, God of mercy, of compassion, we pray, we plead, that you return these precious and beloved people, the captured and the missing, who have cruelly and heartlessly been torn from their homes and carried off to our enemy's territory. We are terrified, contemplating their fate, horrified at the thought of the sufferings of the missing and captured who are not yet within our power to reach. And so we plead before you, source of mercy, be at their side, support them, protect them, and quickly bring them back to the embrace of their families and all who love them, as you have declared in Jeremiah, behold, I will restore the captives of Jacob's tents and have mercy on their dwelling places. Ana Adonai kayem bimhera et ma'amar hakatuv. And so, God, we beseech you to establish soon and speedily the line that we read from the book of Bereshit in Genesis, V'hinei anochi imecha, ushmarticha b'chol asher tilech, v'shivoticha el ha'adama hazot ki lo e'ezovecha, ad asher imasiti et asher dibarti lach. Behold, I am with you, and will guard you in every place where you go, and will dwell with you in this land and bring you back. I will not leave you, but rather do for you as I've spoken. V'shavu vanim ligvulam, may our beloved, those who are being held, be soon and speedily returned back within their borders safely. Ken yehi ratzon, may it be God's will, and let us say, Amen. Please be seated.
Ira Kohler and I really have very little in common, other than I grew up on the South Shore, Ira on the North Shore of Long Island. Both went to a Schechter High School once upon a time. We met at one of the many rallies in front of the United Nations just a few weeks ago when we were protesting what the United Nations has not done to check on the captives, to try to get the captives released, etc. And through one connection and another, we are really fortunate that Ira has time in his schedule, because he does this talk and presentation in many communities, to be with us today. His bio and his life description over the last few weeks is all in the program. I introduce Ira Kohler.
Hello? Do you guys hear me? First of all, here, right? Is this better? It's okay. We're gonna get to work. First of all, Rabbi Resnick, I want to thank you for inviting me. Is this too much? Okay. Hello? All right. First of all, I want to thank you for inviting me to this community and to speak here today. You know, we're now coming in, soon it's going to be midnight, and tomorrow morning at 6:30, we're going to mark exactly a year from when Hamas began their attack. And I'm not going to say excited, I'm very honored to be here to share with you my story today. And I'm going to tell you that my presentation today is going to be split up into 4 different parts, okay? The first part, I'm going to talk a little bit about myself, a little introduction, who am I, where I come from. I'm going to talk mainly today about October 7th, what I was doing a year ago today. I'm going to talk a little bit about my time in Gaza, and I'm going to conclude and talk a little bit about the hostages. Can you guys see over here? Perfect. So, like Rabbi Resnick was saying, I grew up on Long Island in Plainview, for those who might know the area. I went to the Schechter School of Long Island. It was a nice Jewish day school. I grew up in a very Jewish community. I went to Midway Jewish Center, a school right around the corner. Every camp, I went to the Young Judea camps, which is about 45 minutes in New York. I guess west of here. I loved sports growing up, and when I graduated from high school, I went to the University of Delaware, where I graduated in 2021 with a degree in economics. And then after that, I decided to make the move, to make Aliyah, move to Israel, and to serve in the IDF. So you can see right here this picture of myself in the middle, my brother and my sister next to me. This is the summer of 2021 when I was moving to Israel, and I moved through a program called Garin Tzavar. Garin Tzavar is a program that helps lone soldiers. A lone soldier is a soldier serving in the Israeli Defense Forces who doesn't have immediate family in Israel. So for me, because I grew up in New York, in the United States, my family lives here, and I moved to serve in Israel, I was considered a lone soldier. And this is the program, Garin Tzavar, that assists people like me in moving to Israel and enlisting in the Israeli Defense Forces. I moved with this program to a kibbutz called Kibbutz Erez. You can see right here, Kibbutz Erez is about half a mile from the Gaza border. And you can see the picture all the way on the end. Many nights in my kibbutz, me and my friends would go out on this hill and we'd overlook in the distance, we'd look into Gaza and we saw the beautiful sunset. And we'd see the buildings, and it was only a mere half mile away. Down the bottom, this is actually my host family. Because my family lived here, we're each assigned a little family for us. And in this picture, the kids are 2 and 6. They're now 5 and 9, almost 5 and 10 actually. So they're getting much older. And this last picture that I'm going to point out is the group of 17 of us from North America, lone soldiers, who moved to Israel to serve in the IDF, and I'll point 3 people out. First of all, the far end is myself. The guy next to me, the tall guy, his name is Joseph, and he's important because me and him actually served in the same battalion. So all these people are friends of mine, and they went to serve in different areas of the Israeli Defense Forces, and me and him served in the same unit. And the third person is the girl on the bottom all the way to that side, because her parents are here. I actually don't know where they went. They're over there. But their daughter also served in the IDF in what's called Isuf Kravi, which I guess is combat intelligence in English, right? So this is the group. We all enlisted into the IDF, and in January of 2022, I enlisted finally to the Tzanchanin, to the Tower Trooper Brigade. I went through training for 8 months, which consists of learning how to shoot a gun, learning the values of the IDF, learning how to jump from a plane, and many weeks in the fields, including war weeks. At the end of those 8 months, we had a ceremony, or in Hebrew, a tekes, called a tekes kunta, or a beret ceremony, where we walk 50 kilometers, and at the end we get our red beret, signifying that now we have finished, we have completed our service, or our training, and we are now ready for our active service. And you could look all the way down there in that picture, just a little snippet from my service in the battalion. This picture was taken in Hebron. You can also see it in your pamphlets on the front cover. This is when I was in the city of Hebron in the West Bank, just guarding the city residents. So from the time I finished training until October 7th, I had a pretty basic, normal service. I was training, I was guarding, doing some arrests, training some more, very routine. And then we get into October 7th. And at this point, my service takes a change, as does everyone's. But my October 7th story actually begins not on October 7th itself, but rather the week before. And the reason is that on October 7th, in the evening, my unit was supposed to start in Hebrew what is called a targad. A targad is a battalion-wide war week. And just to explain the scale of this war week, it's something that only happens once every 8 months. So the time before we had this major war week as an entire battalion was the previous February. And now we're in October, and we're getting ready for this war week. It's so big that they actually split the week into 2. The second week itself is the war week itself, and the first week is an entire week to prepare for the war week. So what do we do during the week before? We take our guns to the shooting range, we make sure they all work. We take all of our equipment, as you can see over here in that last picture, we make sure our equipment is up to standard. We fix up everything, make sure our knee pads are buckling, our helmet has everything, our night vision is working, everything is ready. We also take our gun. You can see in the middle of my gun. We clean it really, really well, to the point that the battalion commander actually comes to each person in the battalion and checks if it's clean. He takes a finger in, he swoops inside to like the hardest to reach spots, and if he pulls out like a little schmutz, it's, I know, Yiddish. They don't speak Yiddish there. If he pulls out a little schmutz, then it's not clean. So we clean everything really well. And I'll just point out for me, this gun that I have is called the Negev, which is different than the others. In my unit, most people have what's called the M4, which is actually, I think, produced here in Connecticut, if I'm not mistaken. It's in the United States, I'm pretty sure here in Connecticut. It's a semi-automatic rifle, which means click, shoot, click, shoot. I had an Israeli-made gun called the Negev. It's a machine gun, and it's an automatic weapon, which means click, and it's like, that's the difference between my guns. And that also meant that during a war, and during a war week, and during actual war, my role in the team was different because I had that specific gun. So right, we're waiting an entire week of getting ready for war, and where are we? Here's Israel. This is Gaza, and you see where I pointed to the arrow. This is where our base is, and closer up, this is Jerusalem. The blue area all the way at the end is the Dead Sea. In the middle, this entire empty area is the Judean desert. You have Route 1 from Jerusalem to the Dead Sea, and across the Dead Sea you have Route 90. In the middle of the area is just a desert. This is where our base is. I like to make a joke sometimes and say the only things are camels and us, because it's really true. There's really nothing in the area. And this is where we were, October 6th, as we're getting into Shabbat, and as like the Knesset Shabbat, right? As we're getting to the holiday, our commanders tell us all of our equipment needs to be ready, because on October 7th, that's Saturday, right when Shabbat and the holiday was supposed to end, we were literally supposed to put everything down, take our army bags that were all packed with all of our equipment, and be on our way. So October 6th, they say, get everything ready. Our bags are literally sitting next to our bed. Shabbat starts, Simchat Torah, and it's a balagan, it's a craziness. Why? Because there's hundreds of guys in this base, and it's 100 Israeli crazy guys, and we're doing the hakathot, where you dance around with the Torahs. It's a lot of the celebration. And we go to bed pretty late, and the rationale that we have is we say, well, October 7th in the evening, we're going to start this war week. So we want to go to bed as late as possible on Friday night, so we can wake up as late as possible on Saturday and be as refreshed as possible for the war week, where we won't eat much and have much rest. We'll go to bed pretty late. At 6:30 in the morning, I'm laying there on my bed, on the base, with Nebi Musa. My phone starts buzzing. I pick it up, I look at it, and I see red alerts coming in. And I decide to myself, I say, okay, there's always red alerts in Israel. And literally today, if you guys have been paying attention, there's been red alerts all over the north. So I say to myself, okay, it's routine. I put it on silent mode, put the phone down. About 15 minutes later, my commander enters the room. He says, get up. Urgently, he gets us all up, and he says, there's something in the south, we don't know what it is, but we need to be ready. There might be a bigger situation. Didn't use the word war, it might be a war, we don't know, there's something. So at that moment, we're getting ourselves together, we're putting literally just our water in our canteens, because everything else is ready. And then a friend of mine says, oh my gosh, look at this, and he shows us on his phone the first video that circulated that day, which you saw Hamas terrorists in Sderot on a pickup truck, for those who remember the video, literally shooting at rooftops in Sderot, which is not a small community. It's a city of 35,000 residents. And we realized at that moment that this might be something more than it is. But we're now on this base. We then soon after give in our phones, and we're told then that we're going to make our way outside the base, and there are going to be helicopters. They're going to pick us up and bring us to the Gaza region. So we walk outside with all of our equipment. We make our way outside, and we get in these helicopters. These are called Yasur helicopters. What's the difference between a different type of helicopter? There are attack helicopters, which will literally attack, And this is a Yasor helicopter, which is a transport helicopter. Its sole purpose is to bring soldiers from point X, or point A to point B. This helicopter is supposed to fit about 30 soldiers in the back and the body of the foliage of the helicopter. If you could see here, right over there, you can see I was wearing a red circle that day. I'm sitting on the side of this bench. On the other side, there's another fence, there's another bench, and then in the middle is like an aisle. And we literally squeeze people sitting on the benches really tight and in the aisle on the ground to the point where I couldn't even move my legs because of how tight it was pushed against me. They squeezed that morning just over 50 soldiers in an area that should only be fitting 30 soldiers. And because there was only 4 helicopters that ended up making it to the base, and we had just over 200 soldiers to bring down to the Gaza region. So at that moment, I want to show you this little video, very short. I just want you to see 2 things. First of all, count how many helicopters there are, because there are 4, and just look around. You'll see it's the middle of the desert. This video was taken by someone right as the helicopters were about to take off and take us to the Gaza region. That's it. A little video you could see that morning. Next thing you know, helicopter goes in the air and we start flying. We go from our base all the way down there towards the Gaza region. And there's these windows that line the sides of the helicopter. And me being a little bit curious, I picked my head up to try and look over the windows to see what I could see. Now, I remember as we're flying over Jerusalem, I see the white cords bridge. For those who know, it's this huge white bridge that marks or symbolizes the entrance into the Jerusalem. And I look in the distance, and I notice the old city. And I remember looking, and I was looking around at my friends, and me, all in full military gear, going to whatever we were going to. We didn't nearly understand the magnitude of what we were going to. But we know we're going to something, some sort of war, or some sort of a situation. Thank you. And we're flying over Jerusalem, and we're seeing, these Jerusalem landmarks. And we think to ourselves, at least I think to myself, this is crazy. This is straight out of, a movie. I felt. And we keep flying, and then we make our way to the Gaza region. And one of the questions I often get asked is, when we were heading in this direction, there were tens of infiltration points along the border. There were tens of communities, cities in kibbutzim and Nova Festival and all over that were infiltrated by terrorists. And people often say, well, where were you going? Do you know where you were going? And I'll tell you, that morning when we were leaving, we were told we were going to Nativ HaSorah. You see, I circled on the very top. Nativ HaSorah is one of the first communities that was infiltrated on October 7th. For those who know the infamous paraglider videos, where you saw Hamas terrorists paragliding into a community, that was up there. For reference, this right next to it, I circled in orange, is where I lived. That's Kibbutz Erez. So where I lived, the last 2-3 years, is right next to that community. We then were told we're going to Kibbutz Side, which is all the way down here, and then as we're on the helicopter, technical difficulties. It's okay. We're good. Give me a second. And we're back. What?
Wear this, please, so I can hear you.
Yeah, where should I wear it? Here? That's good.
Thank you very much.
You got it. All right. Give me 1 second. Awesome. Okay, we're good? So then when we're getting on the helicopter, we were told we're going to Nachalos. Nachalos, I circled right here. Nachalos is a community right along the border that has both a kibbutz and right next to it, the Nachalos base. So we felt we were going there. We're flying from our base over Jerusalem towards the Gaza region. And at a certain point, the helicopter crew who was responsible for telling us basically what to do, told us all, as we're on the helicopter, to stand up. Those benches that were on the side fold up like this. He said, stand up, have your bags in between your legs, hold on to the handles along the side. And they told us in a moment, we're going to be landing. And once we land, we need to exit the helicopter as soon as possible because the helicopter itself is a target. And they don't want the helicopter to sit for too long. So we're all standing up. And during this time, in the cockpit, the pilot, and I only learned this later when documentary that was made about this, the pilot talked about this. And he said that as he's flying towards the Nachalos area, he notices a circulation, a movement of people there, and there's something odd, suspicious. And he talks to this co-pilot, and he says, those are not Israeli civilians. He says, so the Israelis were told to go into their safe rooms, to lock the door, close the door, to not go out for anyone. He said, those are 100% terrorists. And he says, at that moment, well, I can't land there. I need to move closer inland, further away from the terrorists. So he decides we're going to land where it's circled in red, over there. On the other side of the road, right here, this is Kibbutz Alumim. This is Kfar Nahman. In the middle is this open field. He decides this is where we're going to land. So back in the back, we're all standing up. We're ready to go. And next thing you know, as we're about to land, we're standing there, right? Benches up, bags between our legs, holding onto the handles. We hear a huge boom. Our helicopter was hit by a rocket, and our entire helicopter shook. We all fell to the ground like an earthquake. And we get down, and in a moment's notice, as we're starting to get up, the helicopter crew screams. It says, "Kulam lamata, kulam lamata," everyone down. Because at that moment, the same terrorists that just shot a rocket were now shooting gunshots, and you're hitting the side of the helicopter, and we hear click, 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 click. And more than that, the windows that line the helicopter were now the vessels in which some of the bullets were entering in. So we stayed really close to the ground. And the pilot, at that moment, made a miraculous and heroic decision. He first of all realized that he had two engines, or he knew he had two engines, and that one of the engines was hit because it was not working, and that he only had one engine, which meant that he had to make an emergency landing. The other thing he did, the heroic thing he did, was he realized as we were absorbing gunfire, that he had to release the gas tank. Because the gas tank that's attached to the helicopter, there's a mechanism where he can release the gas tank, because God forbid if a bullet penetrated inside, the entire helicopter could have exploded while we were in the air. So the pilot made an emergency landing on this open field, right over here. The red pin is where the helicopter landed. It's about 11 a.m. on Saturday, October 7th. We get down. The pilot then tries to open the door electronically. It doesn't work, so they have to do it manually. Open the door, and we run out into the fields where this red line is. Those army bags that we had were the only things in this field really protecting us, because it was a completely dirt field. There was no rocks or trees to get behind. So we took our bags, we placed them between us, and we got behind them. And the terrorists that just shot a rocket and were shooting gunshots at us were lined here along the road. This up here, right, is Kibbutz Alumim. This road is called Stein 232. It's a central road in the Gaza envelope, and where a lot of the terrorist activity happened that day. And on the other side is where we landed, and we were starting to engage in a battle. We're there for that 20 minutes, just returning with fire. And at a certain point, we make our way to this area. Because down here, I know it's a little fuzzy in the picture, but it's a little forest area. And there were trees to be behind some rocks. And they decided for us that it was safer to move our way there instead of being exposed in the open field. When we moved our way there, we ended up engaging with another several terrorists, but it wasn't anything crazy. Thank God. The part that I leave until now, because I want to show you guys the pictures, is that the craziest thing in this entire story is that they said that this helicopter is a target. That if it's sitting in an open field, it's a target, right? It's a threat. When we all left the helicopter, we were engaging in a battle with these terrorists who were along this road. Probably 30 seconds, maybe a little bit more, after the last soldier of ours exited the helicopter, we just hear another whoosh and boom. Another rocket hit the center of the helicopter, and you see it all go up in flames. This is all while, just to clarify, all while this battle is taking place, right next to us, this helicopter is going up in flames, and this is a picture that someone took. You can see it's completely on smoke, on fire, and this is the aftermath. You could see really the helicopter took a beating. It's gone, it's kaput, as you might say. We all left this helicopter before anything happened, and I will say a few things, because I'm sure you guys are thinking, well, what happened? No one was killed in this incident, and that's how miraculous it really was, especially because of the type of disaster that could have taken place if while we were in the air, we were hit by the rocket in the center of the helicopter, or if a bullet or the rocket penetrated into the gas tank. The other thing I just want to point out here, you see these line of trees in the back? Those line of trees line the road where the terrorists were. So just to put in perspective, we were basically on the same line of the helicopter, and then the terrorists were around the trees. Just to keep perspective of how far away the terrorists were, they weren't so close. They were about 150, 200 meters. The third thing, the last thing I just want to point out is that you can see this field, it's all dirt. So when I was explaining earlier that there was no place to get behind, no place to hide behind, this is what I was talking about. I guess the last thing before I moved on, I forgot. There was no one killed, but there were 2 people who were injured in this incident. The pilot, when he was escaping, was shot in the leg, and he's doing fine. And my friend, who you saw in the very beginning, the tall one, who served in my unit, he was shot through the shoulder and through the jaw, actually. And he went through several procedures and is doing fine now. He's in his master's in business in Texas, where he's from, and he's doing, thank God. But aside from those 2 incidents, it really was such a miracle that everyone got away safe and sound. Yeah. After all of this, we make our way to Kibbutz Be'eri. We're in that forest area. Our commanders told us all to get up. They said, get in 2 lines, we're going south. So we're going to a kibbutz. We walk 3 kilometers, and we make our way around 1:30 in the afternoon on October 7th into Kibbutz Be'eri. At this moment, we become the first major unit to arrive that day. And what I mean is that before 1:30, there was the security team of Kibbutz Be'eri, there was police forces, and there were some small special forces teams, namely Shadag, who came there around 10, 11 in the morning, and Sayeret Matkal, that came about half an hour before us. When we arrived at Kibbutz Be'eri with more than 100 soldiers, we became the first major unit to arrive and, had a large impact. We came in here, this is a map of Be'eri. You can see over there, that's the front gate. Around 1:30 we enter in, and I remember looking to my left as we're entering the kibbutz. I see several bodies on the ground, and I realized at that moment that we're entering into something more than what we originally expected. We made a right turn along the perimeter and made our way inside the kibbutz, and eventually made our way to this area. This area that I circled are where the children's houses are. The children's houses on the kibbutz are where the kids go after school for their programming, or in the summers, they go there for their camps. They're not there on a Saturday morning, they live in their houses with the families, but this is the children's clubhouses. We ended up making our way to this area, and I'm going to show you some pictures. These pictures, by the way, were taken back in March when I finished my service. About a week later, I went back to Be'eri. I walked around to try and get an understanding of where I was, what I was doing that day, to puzzle piece a lot of things together. And I took several pictures. I went with my host father and this guy who's a resident of Kibbutz Be'eri, and we were exchanging a lot of information about what I experienced and also what he knew. So we could, put puzzle pieces together just between the 2 of us. We made our way right to the children's houses, and it's over here. The other side of the road, if you can see, those are the children's houses. And this area, behind this shrubbery, for those who can maybe see, there's like a half-concrete wall. You guys see that? We get up to the half-concrete wall. Now, basically, we put our gun down. The only thing exposed above it is my neck up, and obviously my gun is perched on the ledge there, on the wall. And we're looking in that direction. And almost immediately when I get there, I see someone run outside of the children's house, run out, take a bag, run back inside. Someone wearing completely civilian clothing, sweatpants and a shirt. And moments earlier, as we're walking into Be'eri, our commander tells us that we need to be careful. He says, we're entering into kibbutz. It's not like Gaza, or it's us versus the bad guys. He said, we're entering into a community that's us, terrorists, police officers, other IDF forces, the security team of the kibbutz, and most importantly, there's a ton of civilians here. We need to be very careful what we're doing. And when I get to this area, I have my gun on the ledge, and my scope is on this person who runs out really, really quickly, grabs a bag, goes back into the building, and I'm confused who he is because there's no gun on him. He goes back into the building, and him and whoever other terrorists are there start to shoot in our direction. And I then realized that was obviously a Hamas terrorist, a bad guy you can call him. What we learned later, what I learned later, was that one of the things that these terrorists did was they actually brought in bags, like duffel bags, into Israel, filled with other guns, but a lot of more magazines, explosives, rockets. Instead of carrying everything on their vest, they brought in these bags with as much ammunition as they could. And that's exactly what he was grabbing for. But the confusing point of the situation that I like to share is that, and the reason I shared this over a lot of the other situations that happened that day, was that it really shows the complexity of the fighting at Be'eri for two reasons. One, the amount of people that were there, as far as civilians with the soldiers, with terrorists, and more so also because these terrorists are coming in clothes like you guys are dressed nicer than them, but in civilian clothes. We were stationed here for about an hour and a half. I'll show you another picture you could see. This is the children's house, and that's the yard. There was another point where we noticed a terrorist in this area, and back here, me and my friends who were next to each other were shooting in the direction of the terrorist that was behind these fence in this children's playground. And you can see here on these little railings, for those who are closer, maybe you can see some bullet marks. And I was explaining to this guy who was in Be'eri what we saw, what was happening, and all of that. We were, like I said, we entered around 1:30 in the afternoon. We were there for many hours, and as we got into late afternoon, evening, there would start to be more of the shift and more of the progression in favor of us and the kibbutz. And what I mean by that is that as the evening came along, many more forces came, IDF forces, and most namely, a lot of more special forces units and tanks. When that happened, there was a little bit of a shift. And we were told as we're getting into the evening, right now, we are going to be starting to engage with the rescuing of families from their homes, and the tanks and the special forces units are going to continue engaging with the terrorists. So we make our way to this house that I'm pointing to here. This house becomes our home, our home base for the next many hours, from about 6 p.m. on Saturday through 2 a.m. on Sunday early morning. This house becomes our base in the sense that we start bringing families from houses in the area to this house. We protect them and guard them, our unit, and then eventually we bring them out together outside the kibbutz. Does that make sense? So the first family we bring back is a young couple, and the woman goes straight to the safe room. You can see she's pretty scared. She doesn't really know what's happening. And then the guy comes down and he starts sharing with us what's happening in Israel, because we're curious. We don't have our phones at that moment. He shares with the group, and then eventually I ask him personally, I said, can you tell me what's happening in Kibbutz Erez? I said, I had friends there that weekend, my host family, I had the whole community there. And he looks at his phone, he tries to see anything, and he tells me, I don't find anything. And that's a good sign. At least for the time being, I would learn more later, but I knew at least for the time being, I didn't have so much to worry about, especially compared to what was happening in Be'eri. We continue to rescue families throughout the night, and the way we would do this is we get to houses, and when you enter into a house, these families are told to go into their safe rooms, to close the door, lock the door, to not allow anyone in, right? Because these terrorists are trying to take them out. So when we get to the houses, we need to basically go to the door of the safe room and convince the families through the door that we're actually the good guys and we're here to rescue them. So I'll show you just one little video. I'm not in this, but my team is. It's in Hebrew, the visuals are the most important, and you could see my team taking out a family. And you can see a little girl, a dad, and then a little girl, and then in the back you'll see the mom. And here the timestamp, 10:18. October 7th. You can see here, little girl, a dad, and then another girl back there. And this is what it would look like. We would be taking our families, we brought them out through the night until about 2 a.m. in the middle of the night. So, I'm going to summarize Be'eri right now, because we ended up arriving to Be'eri at, like I said, 1:30 on Saturday, and we left the kibbutz on Tuesday, October 10th in the morning. We were there for just under 3 days. I just want to summarize a few things before I move on for a moment. The first thing is that you could see in this area a lot of the red dots and the dots. These dots are areas of either death, a hostage taking, or both. And this area closest to me is where the most of the craziness happened. This is where my unit and most of the IDF was through all of Sunday and all of Monday. The second thing I'll say to summarize is that the last terrorist was eliminated on Monday morning, and we spent all of Monday going literally house to house, room by room, checking everywhere to make sure that it was clean of terrorists. And only later on Monday were we able to confirm that Kibbutz Be'eri is officially clean of terrorists. And the last thing to summarize is that you could see all this red area. Not all the kibbutz had terrorist activity in it. Most of it did. This area around the children's houses is where I engaged in the first 3 hours. And then, like I said, I was here the next 3 days. So I left Tuesday morning. And a few weeks later, I finally made it into Gaza. Only going to be talking about Gaza for a few minutes. Because first of all, we don't have much time. Secondly, I was there for just over 100 days. And if I'm going to start telling you everything, we'll be here until, I don't know, whenever. But basically, I'll be here for 100 days. I was in northern Gaza, in Gaza City, in Sajaiya, which is a refugee camp. Then I made my way to central Gaza for about a week, 2 weeks, 2 weeks and a half. And then I was in the southern city of Khan Yunis for about a month and a half. The difference between the fighting in Be'eri and Gaza was that Be'eri was a battle, and Gaza, it was a long, drawn-out war. And our mission as a battalion was to enter into an area, take it over, look for terrorists, but also, more importantly for us, to look for terrorist infrastructure. That infrastructure will then be destroyed, and then to advance to a new area. So I want to show you 2 videos, just to really summarize what was happening. The first video is taken from, I actually brought in a GoPro into Gaza when I was in Khan Yunis. A lot of soldiers did. I was one of the later ones who decided to do it. More so for myself, to be able to look back and have some, not just memories, but really some documentation for me of what I was doing. And just a little video where you can see how we go into a building, this particularly is a school, and how we clear out rooms just to make sure that there's no terrorists. And the camera is on me, so that gun is my gun.
נקי.
נקי?
להיצמד לזיקים. שי פה.
שירותים.
שי דה. חמד תבוא אתה איתי. יאללה, אני ואתה עכשיו רצים. לנו לפתוח? כן, לפתוח. עכשיו רצים על הסטריפ הזה, רוצו, סתם.
אני איתך. Now this is the bathroom. We're just going room by room.
אחד להמשך, אחד עוקר. אחד להמשך, אחד
Making sure
עוקר.
it's clear terrace. אני להמשך, אתה דוקר.
שלוש תאים משמאל, אני מימין. במקביל, אני להמשך, שניכם נוקרים במקביל, רוצו.
הבא.
מעולה.
יש. הבא.
מעולה, יש לכם לנעול את הדלת.
So this is exactly how it would look. We go into houses, we go into schools, we go into different types of buildings, searching for any terrorists, and then afterwards, searching for any terrorist infrastructure. And I'll show you one example of something we found. When we were in northern Gaza, in the neighborhood of Zaytun, in the city of in Gaza City, in a mosque, in the basement of the mosque, basically a whole terrorist headquarters of sorts. There was an entrance to a tunnel, a little conference room of theirs, a laboratory, and also a warehouse of weapons ammunition and weapons parts. So this video is in Hebrew, but there's subtitles. So it's important to read it, and the visuals are very important.
אנחנו נכנסים כרגע למסגד, שבו נמצא מתחת למסגד בקומת מרתף, מחסן, אמל"ח ומעבדה של רקטות של החמאס, ומלא מטענים וחומרי חבלה וחומרי נפץ. אנחנו לוחמי גדוד 790 של הצנחנים, מיוחדים, נמצאים מתחת למסגד בלב העיר עזה, נמצאה פה מעבדה של רקטות מיוחדת של החמאס, שמגע איך החמאס משתמש במסגדים לרצח נשים וילדים. אפשר לראות את כמות האמל"ח הבלתי נתפסת שהאויב מחביא פה.
במהלך הפשיטה בקומת המרתף מצאנו חדר קירות בלוקים שהפשיט אותנו. פוצצנו את קירות הבלוקים ובאמת גילינו מעבדה לייצור אמל"ח של החמאס ופיר שמוביל לבית הקרקעי. החמאס הסתיר את הפס ייצור הזה בתוך המסגד. ניתן לראות את הסימנים של החיצוץ. לאחר שפוצצנו את הקירות, התגלנו שני דברים. אחד זה ספיר.
עומק משהו כמו 5 מטר, שנמצא ממש פה מתחת למסגד, פה במרתף שלו. זה מה שנמצא כחלק מהפשיטה.
ניתן לראות פה כל מיני עזרים לייצור אמל"ח.
פה אפשר לראות על הלוח את הסרטוטים של הרקטות.
ובחדר הזה ניתן לי ממש לראות המון חלקים של ייצור אמל"ח, פה מצמרים, רש"קים טרמוברים, RPG.
So this was probably the biggest thing that our battalion found while we were in Gaza. There were other examples where we found these large rockets, where we found other tunnels, but I don't think anything as grand as this, that under a mosque we found all of this, Hamas infrastructure. So like I was saying, I was in Gaza for just over 100 days. In February, I finally finished my time in Gaza, and 2 weeks later, I officially finished my service. And you can see this little cute video here. There's a tradition in the IDF where you take your military ID card. It's the best day of every parent, where you take a scissor and you cut up your card, and you officially symbolize that you have finished your service. So here's just a little cute video of me, I guess. I cut up my card, I throw my scissors in the air. So I finished my service in March, so I was in the war for about 5-6 months, including for 4 months in Gaza. Before I conclude here today, because we only have a few minutes, there are 2 people who I want to talk about. And the first one is my friend Yair Avitan. Yair is my friend from my teen, who this past June, as he was operating in Sajaiya, was unfortunately killed by Hamas. This picture was actually taken a week earlier when me, him, and some other friends from our teen were hanging out just a few days before they were about to go in. Yair always had a smile on his face, that was his thing. And his saying for his Lansiach Oto is, I'll say in Hebrew, Hachiyuch Shalcha Lenetzach Yair, which his name is Yair. What that means, Hachiyuch Shalcha, your smile, Lenetzach Yair, will forever light up, will light people up. So saying that even from above, he's lighting people up with a smile, and he really is a tremendous guy, and everything I spoke here about today is dedicated to him. And the next person I will briefly talk about is my friend Omer Nutra. we all know, and we all talked about it earlier, and we all did the prayer. There's still 101 hostages in Gaza. 7 Americans, 4 hopefully, or presumed to be alive, and one of them is a dear friend of mine from my town. We are very close friends. We went to the same school, to the same synagogue, to the same camp. Our families are close. We just had them over for Rosh Hashanah, actually. An owner served as a tank commander on the Gaza border on October 7th and was taken from his tank. A few pictures here. All the way at the end you could see myself and Oner with my siblings and Oner's brother about 9 years ago in Israel when we were there for Oner's bar mitzvah. You can see this picture with myself, my parents, and Oner at one of Oner's ceremonies when he became a commander. He was taken on October 7th from his tank. And I want to share with you guys about him, about my relationship. And we all need to continue fighting and, until every single last hostage is home. And I'll share this last page. There's many ways to help, and I'm going to leave this up later because if you guys can look at it after too. Bring Oner Home has had a whole initiative as of late for a GoFundMe page, and I'll explain why. The Nutra family, his family, has been funding a lot of their initiatives and their efforts to get the word out and to release him from their own pockets. And as of late, they realized it's too much, and they've been asking for help. And so I'm going to ask all of you, you don't all need to donate, whoever wants to donate can donate, but I ask you at least all to scan the barcode. It will take you to the GoFundMe, and you can read more about who Oner is, and also what the fundraiser does and where the money is going to. You can also learn about Oner through these social medias, Instagram, TikTok, or X. With that, I know we're going to be concluding. I'm not going to be answering any questions now, but afterwards there's going to be something in the other room. I'm going to be around for anyone who wants to ask any questions, anything. I'm going to be there. With that, I want to thank you all, and thank Rabbi Resnick, of course, and without further ado.
I think many of us have seen many videos, in part of many rallies and demonstrations, and heard many stories. Ira, I have to say, this was the most powerful hour for me since October 7th. Thank you. We now continue with the Makela, the Makela's choir, from B'nai Israel under Linda Goodman's leadership. The song Achenu is an extremely powerful song, which I urge all of you to Google and watch other renditions, even though this one will be beautiful too. It says, as for our brethren, the entire house of Israel, Kol Beit Yisrael, who remain in distress and captivity, whether on sea or land, may the Kadosh Baruch Hu, may God have compassion on them. Bring them from distress to relief. May Afela le'ora, from darkness to light, from servitude to redemption. And let us say Amen. We have created for you a handout, which should be on every other seat maybe, which is Achenu in Hebrew, in English, for those of you whose Hebrew is not as great, and in transliteration as well. I encourage you to sing along or to hum along with the Makela.
Oh
In a moment, Cantor Lila Sugarman from Danbury will lead us in Hatikva. And I'll ask all of you to rise in just a moment. I just want to recognize some people, and I decided not to mention names because I know I'll forget somebody, but fellow clergy from the Southbury Clergy Council who are here, and politicians, our first selectmen who are here. Thank you for being here. It really means a lot to us. And you're not really supposed to do a hakarat hatov and embarrass somebody, but one of our board members, Chaim Gewurtzman, who's standing in the back, went to Israel and volunteered more than once to help people in need, and we recognize your service greatly. After Hatikva, we are going to go next door if anybody would like a little nash or something to drink, even some Israeli foods made in Israel. Please take your Israeli flags home with you. They were purchased not just to leave here, but display them proudly somehow tomorrow at work, in your car, somewhere. Use those flags, take more flags from the table. We certainly have plenty. After the collation, I can't even say collation after this kind of program, but let's say around 6:30, we are going to go to, those who want to, go to the chapel where I am being joined by Eileen Manella, who is a therapist and group worker, who will join with me to kind of unpack what we all heard. Clearly an incredibly powerful speech, presentation from Ira, and I'm sure we all have a range of emotions. It will be a safe, kind of good space to do some unpacking. Please rise for Hatikva.
This coming year of 5785, we pray for healing, we pray for peace, and we pray for hope. If you would like the words, it's in your Sidurim, the prayer book, page 678. Please join me. Kol od baleva panima nefesh Yehudi homiya ulfaten Mizra kadima ayin litzion Sophia Olavda tikvatenu hatikva vachnotabayim liotam choshi be'atzenu nefesh Zion Yerushalayim liotam choshi be'atzenu eretz Zion Yerushalayim.
Have a good evening.